Hey everybody, welcome back to Grit and Grind. As you can tell by the title of the video, the truck gave us some problems again. So what did we do and did we get it fixed? Well, let's take a look. So when I came in here the other day, the warning's on because the light, the door is open. When I came in here about 3 weeks ago now, the truck would not start. Hit that, click, I could hear the starter engage, but it wouldn't do anything. So let's see if it starts now. I don't know if you can tell. I don't know how well the audio picks it up on this video, but that starter now has some force behind it. This truck has never started so good since I got this vehicle. And I thought nothing was really wrong. Nothing indicated that it was wrong at the time, but there was something. So let's go ahead and turn this off. I'm going to pop the hood here. And let's talk about the series of events. Okay. So 3 weeks, actually it might even have been a month ago at this point. I was coming back from doing something. I had a job to go do. I came out here and I was hoping to go do this job. I had to load the stump grinder, sitting in the garage there. Load the stump grinder up and go do a job. So I get here, of course, click no start. So I came out here messing with the batteries because you know as well as I do from a previous video, I had these problems. It was about 3 months prior to that I was having the no start issue. And what we did was we took that starter out. It bench tested fine, put it back in, truck fired right up, didn't miss a beat. Of course, it never actually sounded like it started that good. So the first thing I did was check these batteries, make sure my connections were all tight on both, because there's two here. And they were. So my dad happened to be here at the time. I went ahead and I was trying to start the truck. He was tapping on the starter with a hammer, see if we could get it to jar. That wasn't doing anything. So came in here, fuse panel right here, and I think I messed with that one. Might have been a fuse panel as well. I was looking for the starter relay. I checked that. Everything was fine. The relay wasn't blown. I had complete lights. Everything else was working on the truck like normal, but it wouldn't start. So I called my dealer and spoke to my parts guy, Kevin. He's a really, really nice gentleman, really knowledgeable, and really trusts his guys over there. He went out into the shop again, asked a bunch of things. I was originally thinking that on these positive terminals, there is an inline fuse. Sorry, I was trying to think of the name for it. So it's inline fuse here, and I was on the forums a bunch. I asked again when this was an issue, reaching out to anybody I could think of, what could be causing this problem. And a lot of people said these were bad terminals, maybe corroded, so on and so forth. I called the dealer, asked him about those. He said, well, they could be bad, but they're about $180 a piece. I'd hate to see you just throw money out the window if that doesn't fix your problem. So I said, okay. In the meantime, he told me he'd call me back. He'd go ask around a little bit more. In the meantime, I pulled these batteries out. They're only about a year and a half old now. Pulled those batteries out, took them over to AutoZone, got them tested. They tested good. They were at 97%. So the issue wasn't with the batteries. It was really weird because, again, no matter what I would do and no matter what was suggested to me, I couldn't get anything to work to fix my issue. So when I found out that the batteries were good, AutoZone wouldn't warranty them because they were good. I stopped over at the Nissan dealership because they were only about 5 minutes down the road. So at that point, I walked in there, told him what was going on, asked Kevin at the parts counter if he had any more insight, and he only suggested the things that I had already tried previously and the things that I tried again when the truck wouldn't start. He said, I don't like to tell you this, but realistically, you need to bring the truck to us, let us diagnose it, let us figure out what's going wrong with it. And I'm used to working on my own stuff. I don't like to take anything to mechanics, especially a dealer. I've been burnt by a couple dealers in the past, left a bad taste in my mouth, spent a lot of money to finally resolve some issues. He said, I trust my guys implicitly, and I know not all dealerships are created equal, not all service techs are created equal. He said, I trust my guys completely. Bring it here, we'll figure it out, we'll get it to you. So I went home, threw the batteries in, called a tow truck, had him come drop it over there. This was a Friday afternoon he dropped it off. So I didn't hear anything. They were open the weekend. The service department, I should say, not just the dealership. Monday afternoon rolls around. I hadn't heard anything. I called the dealer. I said, hey, were they going to call me about what they were doing? Do they need any information from me as far as taking the truck in? They did not at the time. They said they were a little backed up. So they went ahead and said, we'll call you back when we get some information. So Wednesday, I think, of that week, so about 2 days later, I talked to the service manager, and he said, well, we worked on it a little bit Friday in the parking lot. It would click no start, same issue that you were talking about. Said we didn't have any availability to do anything with it the weekend, so Monday when we got here, we went out, tried it, truck fired right up. He said we put it in the shop just to make sure it was indoors so we could work on it, but we didn't have time to work on it that morning. So they shut it off once it was inside, and he said later on in the day in the afternoon they came back to it, clicked no start. So then they started messing around with it for a little bit. Everything was going okay, but it still wasn't starting. All the usual stuff that they would check was coming back fine. And you got to keep in mind, guys, this is a 2018 Titan XD with the Cummins in it, and there is miles and miles of wiring and electrical in these newer vehicles. I can diagnose a lot of things. I am not good at diagnosing electrical on a vehicle. So he said, we went ahead and we checked the connections to the starter, which I showed you before, but I'll try and show you again. So your starter is down, buried in here, and I know you're not going to see it, but it's buried down here. We checked the connections were loose on the starter, and it was arcing, and we tightened those up, and everything seems to be working. The truck is running. We started it. It's working fine. So the other thing we found is that your positives connections on passenger battery actually were a little loose. I said, well, those were loose specifically because I pulled the batteries out to get them tested. I had a tow truck on the way and knew I couldn't screw around. So I went ahead and tightened them up quick, fast, in a hurry. I know those were loose from me. They weren't loose before that, and it was still giving me issues. The second thing I told him was, hey, I had the same issue with the truck 3 months ago. It was almost 3 months to the date, which was crazy. But I had the same issue 3 months ago, and those connections were tight. I said it is possible in 3 months that they loosened up. Anything could happen at any point. But I don't think that's the issue. I sort of have a feeling, based on what you're saying, that the starter might actually be a problem, even though it's working now. He suggested, or actually Kevin, the parts guy, suggested, hey, there could be an intermittent dead spot in the starter among 8 million other things that it could be causing this issue. And I said, I just have a feeling that that starter might be an issue. Can you price out a starter, tell me how quick you can get it, and call me back? He said, sure, no problem. So Probably about 2 hours later, the service manager calls me back and he says, hey, I can get a starter for you. It's this amount of money, which I knew it was because I priced out a starter previously when I was having the issues with the truck. And I said, well, what's your labor to put it in? And he quoted me for labor. It was about $300. I fought with this starter for about 2.5 hours to get it out of the truck because it's aluminum starter housing on cast for the block, and that just fuses itself together, and it's basically impossible to get them apart once they've been sitting for a little bit. I did not want to mess with the starter because I think the whole process took me about 6 hours. I did a couple other things at the same time, but it took me about 6 hours to get the starter out and back in. $300 was a bargain to me. He said, well, I can't get it for a couple days. I said, okay, well, he told me in the meantime, the truck's been starting. He said, we started it multiple times today. My service tech has been looking over everything. He believes it's good. He said he drove it down the road, got everything hot, came back, started it, let it sit for a couple hours. He'd start it again. Everything is working fine. Said, well, if you can't get the starter and it's starting fine, maybe it could just be the loose wires like you said, and I'll know for next time to check that. If it gives me an issue, I'll come get the truck. He said, okay, let me just talk with my service guy, make sure that he's got everything buttoned up, and he did his inspection. Doesn't need to do any more work and everything is good to go. I said, okay. So he calls me back about 30 minutes later. He said, you can come get the truck. Everything's good. He owed me basically a diagnostics fee, but I know he'd been screwing around with this truck for probably a couple hours. And his diagnostic fee basically covered that. So I said, okay. About 2 minutes before I was ready to head out the door, he calls me and says, Mike, I have bad news. I said, what's that? He goes, your truck won't start. Same exact problem as before. I said, are we sure it's the starter? He goes, I am very confident that the starter is the issue. I can have it here in 2 days. This is Wednesday at this time. So Friday I would have the starter. I said, well, if it comes in Friday morning like you're telling me, can I have the truck back Friday afternoon? He said, yeah, I don't see why that would be a problem. Okay. So he calls me Friday mid-morning. He said, I have bad news again. I said, what's that? He goes, they shipped the starter to the wrong dealership. I won't have it here today. Maybe it will come in tomorrow, Saturday, and they are open limited hours on Saturday. He said, if it comes tomorrow, I will try to get it back to you because I know you use this truck for business. I said, okay. He did not get it back on Saturday. So Monday rolls around. He calls me again mid-morning. He said, starter's in, your truck's good. This is what you owe me. He basically took off the diagnostics fee and everything they had done previously to the truck, which would be a couple hours of messing around, and just charged me what it would be to replace the starter in it. So they took care of me absolutely great. Cannot recommend them enough. If you're in Western New York, I'm in Pendleton, so I'm between North Tonawanda and Lockport. There's 2 dealerships, Mike Barney Nissan on Sheridan, and then West Her Nissan on Transit in Lockport. I took it to West Her Nissan on Transit in Lockport. Those guys were great. They got me back up and running as soon as they could. Of course, I was a little bit frustrated because I needed the truck for business. I had jobs to go do, and I couldn't get the truck for about a week and 3 days. But anyway, they got the truck back. I went there. Truck has never started so good in its life. It's been perfect for me ever since, knock on wood. So I can't thank those guys enough. I think we finally fixed it. And the moral of the story is you can ask people online what they think it is, and there's a lot of good answers out there. But if I would have listened to what people were saying and replaced these at about $200 a piece, so you're talking about $400, it wouldn't have taken long to actually replace these, but $400, it definitely wouldn't have fixed my issue. It ended up being the starter, because the starter would work, but intermittently it would not work. And I wouldn't have known that or even thought that especially until they put the new starter in the truck. This truck has never started as good as it does now. So with that said, I'm hoping, knock on wood, or in this case a battery, that we don't have any other issues with this truck going forward as far as starting issues, and everything works out as it should. That said, you know I'll always keep you guys posted, so if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content.